I'll say this plainly, I was terrible at writing essays when I started at the University of Oxford. But what I was taught helped me survive and even get a first-class degree. In this video, I'll show you the 7 key things that I was taught by top professors at the best university in the world. I will then show you how to apply these 7 precise steps to craft persuasive and powerful arguments anywhere in the world. By the way, if you're new here, my name is Dr. Vinay Raniga, a former political leadership scholar at the University of Oxford. I'm interested in ideas that build nations and help people live better lives. So please hit that subscribe button below. It really helps us make more innovative and new content. There are 7 steps I'm going to share, like I said before, but stay tuned to the end because I'm going to do a quick fire session on what examiners want and what we commonly get wrong. Okay, the first one is say what you're going to say it, and say that you have said it. Now, this line actually changed how I write essays. The first thing you need to do in the introduction is actually say what you're going to say. Define the question, define the key issues, and actually lay out your arguments. In the body of the essay, you need to say it. You need to develop your arguments and make sure that you're hitting the key points you said in your introduction. And the final thing is to conclude the essay, you need to say what you have said. So you need to reiterate what arguments you've made and lead the essay off with a concluding statement. Say what you're going to say it, and say that you've said it. The second point is you actually need to make an argument. You need to go out swinging with your point of view. Sometimes when you write essays, you write for and against and say all the arguments, and you don't actually give your point of view. But to make a really good, impactful essay, you need to say what you think. For example, if there's an essay question that says, do democratic states fuel economic growth? So therefore, if you have a democracy, are they growing more than countries that are not democracies? You need to actually give your point of view. Are you for it? Are you against it? Are you neutral? Sometimes neutral is a bit weak, but you need to give your point of view. Now, to do this, I may say something that makes you switch off this video, but you actually need to go to your lectures. You need to be well read. You need to read around the argument. If not, the examiner that's marking your essay will know, oh, you don't actually know what a democracy is. You don't actually know the proponents of economic growth. You don't know what the key authors have said on this issue. Sometimes your lecturer actually gives you the arguments in the lecture, so you do have to show up at university to do that. So the second point is you need to make an argument. The third point about writing a masterful essay is that structure is everything. Before you write anything, you need to make sure you have the structure of the essay clearly planned. What's in the introduction? What's in the body? What's in the conclusion? This is more important because it helps you order your thinking. What point are you going to say first? And what point are you going to say second? Even more than the essay, you need to think about each paragraph. How do you structure each paragraph? And if you're really focused, you'll know how to structure each sentence. The way to structure this is to use the acronym PEEL. P-E-E-L. First, you make the point in that paragraph, then you give the evidence, then you give the explanation and your analysis of that point, and then you link it to the next paragraph. Because you want to make sure your essay is flowing freely and so that the examiner understands each argument you're making. The fourth point is audience. Like any movie, book, podcast, or essay, you need to know who's going to be watching or reading, and you need to create that piece of content for that audience. So when you're writing an essay, you should think of it in the same way. For an academic essay, it's going to be a professor or an examiner marking it. And you should imagine, my professors told me, that you're writing for a person who's just as intelligent as you, but know very little about the subject. This means when you're explaining a subject matter, you need to define key terms, and you need to explain things very simply. Oxford professors always say that you should use standard examples from other people's work rather than very vivid or very obtuse examples when you're making a point. Now, this is important because if a person is quite intelligent and understands a subject area, they'll be more familiar to common metaphors and analogies and evidence rather than random pieces of evidence you've put in there to look a bit clever. So know your audience really well. They're just as intelligent as you, but they know very little about the subject. So the fifth point is you need to be ruthless. You need to focus every single sentence on answering the question. Sometimes when we're doing essays, we think that it's really important to show the examiner what I know, what I've read. However, if that doesn't answer the essay question, you are going to lose marks. The hardest thing is to go through and print your essay out and go with a red pen. This doesn't answer the question, that doesn't answer the question, and take it out, because it takes us so long to actually compose that piece of work. But my advice is be ruthless, get the red pen, and just focus on the question. The sixth point is the freedom to add your opinion. Probably on the essay you're writing, there's so many different authors that have added their opinion, and you're using their points of view to actually aid and craft your essay. So sometimes it can be scary to think, actually, I disagree with this author and I agree with this author, or putting this all together, my contextual analysis is I would argue. Using the words I in an essay when you're making an original point is actually a good thing to do. It actually shows the examiner you're not just rote learning the content that they've given, you're actually thinking about new ideas and how they combine together. That will get you more marks. The seventh point is to construct your main argument as a dialogue with an imaginary opponent to keep it interesting. Remember, when someone's reading an essay, they still want to be entertained and they still want to learn at the same time. So that's why it's important to make sure you understand that people may have differing points of view to you. So you need to make sure you counteract those different points of view. For example, I may argue that democracies are more powerful at aiding economic growth. Someone maybe in Saudi Arabia might say, no, actually, an absolute monarchy is even more powerful for fueling economic growth. So you need to counteract their argument with that imaginary opponent in your essay. Where you do so is up to you. But remember, you need to structure this before you start. So those are the 7 key points that I have. If you have any more, please add them in the comments below. I'd love to read them. Now, here are the quickfire misconceptions. Examiners want essays that answer the question, but sometimes they get essays that use the question as a hook for prepared material because you spent hours reading it. Essays that misunderstand the question. They don't really answer the question because they don't understand. And essays that only answer part of the question, the part you really like. Sometimes examiners want good understanding of the material, but they get someone who ignores part of the material, someone who misunderstands part of the material, someone who brings irrelevant material like unusual lines of argument to show how clever they are, people who confuse different positions or different lines of argument, and students who don't go to lectures where the material is explained. Examiners want accurate, clear, precise formulation. Sometimes they get students satisfied with getting things approximately right because they're tired. Flowery, over-elaborate prose, that's the most painful thing to put a red line through. And convoluted sentences, which sometimes take up a lot of time and space when you could have just said a simple line. Examiners want proper citations and original thought. Sometimes they get poorly cited work, maybe how to cite is for another video, or students that have copied entire sections from others intentionally or most likely unintentionally. Students who have obviously written a ChatGPT essay, so that's not what to do. And finally, examiners want submissions on time. Sometimes they get late submissions because students haven't structured their week to get it done, and that's normal when you're really stressed. Students that are overwhelmed by the content, that's normal too, there's so much to read. But the smartest people do ask for help when it gets too much. So there you go, those are the 7 key things that you need to know to write a world-class Oxford essay. My favorite being, say what you're going to say it, and say what you said. If you found this helpful and want more Oxford-style guidance, whether it's essay writing or learning how to get through content fast or how I make notes, subscribe and drop a comment below. I would love to turn this into a full series and help you think sharper and write smarter. Thank you so much for watching and see you in the next one.